so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? But purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm Lori LeBate, the host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks. Before we get into our show today, and we're going to be talking about children with dementia, I always like to give people a background as to who Alzheimer Speaks is and how we got started, because we're always getting new listeners around the world. Bottom line, my mom lived with dementia for 30 years. She started having symptoms in her mid-50s and lived till 86. And I just thought it was really important to share information and knowledge of this journey. If it's a person with a dementia, if it's a loved one, if it's a professional, a researcher, it doesn't make any difference, a business providing a service or an organization or foundation. And so our goal here is really just to, be able to help people connect to the services that they deserve and the support that surrounds them that so many times people don't know about. So bottom line, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company, and we provide multiple platforms to help shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort around the world. We believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having the everyday conversations like we do here on Alzheimer Speaks Radio, that we're going to be able to remove a lot of the stigmas attached to dementia and memory loss and help people continue to live with purpose and still hold on to the core of their relationships. We also believe that collaboration is the only way that we're going to win this battle, and we know that that's winning thanks to you in your likes and your clicks and your shares with your Facebook friends, your Twitter tribes, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Pinterest peeps, your all of those little groups on social media have a huge impact. And when you share our information, you're pushing it out into the world. And, the more information that can be found on a topic when we're in need, it just makes it easier for any of us to reach out and grab it. Makes it feel a little bit more normal, especially when so many people around us don't understand it. So again, I just want to thank you because you got us recognized by ShareCare and Dr. Oz as the #1 influencer online, and that wouldn't have happened without you. We were also recognized by Maria Shriver as an architect of change, and again, that's all because of you guys. We really don't have a budget here. We do everything on a shoestring, and our heart just pushes us forward in terms of connecting with people. And again, I just want to thank you so much for being a part of that. Today, my co-host is Harry Urban. And Harry, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself if you don't mind.
No, thank you, Lori. It's so nice to be here. I live in Pennsylvania, and 13 years ago, I was diagnosed with dementia of the Alzheimer's type. It's been a hard 13 years, but I became a strong advocate for raising dementia awareness. And like I said, I'm so happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I'm always excited to have you, Harry, because you just have such great insights and wonderful questions that you ask. So, today we are going to be talking about children with dementia, and we're going to get a mom's perception of what this journey is like. And most of you listeners are probably thinking, what, children with dementia? Say that can't be true. We're finally getting over the hump of this isn't an old person's disease, and people are starting to understand that people in their 40s and 50s can get it, but our children, really? And so I'm really excited to have this show today. And we have Lorena Demian with us, and she is a proud mother of 3 children, and she's an advocate for children diagnosed with dementia. She currently, she says there's really no specialties for or specialists for children with dementia, which, what a struggle that is. We hear all the time how difficult it is to get diagnosed, but then when there's no specialists in this area, that just compounds everything so much. And there's a great need for research studies with this disease and what's causing this in our children as well. She works really hard to educate the public that the disease is causing dementia, and it affects all ages, including our children, not just the elderly. And her hope is really that one day children diagnosed with dementia will be afforded the same quality of care as those that are older. So, welcome, Lorena. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity.
Well, like I said, I'm very excited, and I'm so thankful that you're willing to come and share your story with us today. Why don't you give people a little background in terms of how your personal family has been touched by this disease?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. My son had Lewy body dementia. He was diagnosed with dementia NOS, meaning they didn't know the disease behind of it, when he was 17 years old. But he had symptoms when he was in middle school, where he would get lost in the hallways and not know where he was, not recognize his teachers, not remember the names. He was repeating himself. 2 years later, he was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. And he fought the disease really hard. It was difficult trying to get help for him when there was nobody that even thought that kids could get this.
Mm-hmm.
And we just went through it day by day and stuff. And unfortunately, David passed away. It'll be 2 years on the 26th of this month from Lewy body.
Wow.
Yep. And now my other daughter, his older sister, has Lewy body as well.
Okay. And at what age was she diagnosed?
For her, it was harder to get her a diagnosis because everyone was convinced it was psychological.
Mm-hmm.
But she was diagnosed 5 months after David passed with Lewy body.
Okay. And can you share how old she was at that time?
She was 27.
27. Okay. And you said, so now she's like 29 then, because he's been gone a couple of years, you said?
She will be 29 later this year.
Okay. Wow. What a story. I can't imagine going through that whole process and just trying to figure out the diagnosis in and of itself. Can you explain to some people what are possible symptoms of dementia in children? What were things that you saw with David and your daughter?
Well, they would repeat themselves. They'd ask the same questions over and over again. They would not remember, like sitting a glass of water on the table and then arguing they never did it because they didn't remember that it happened. Difficulty with communicating was another one where pausing between words. David and Jessica would start to say a sentence or start talking, and after 2 words, just not even continue.
Mm-hmm.
They would also say one word for another. Like there was a group called the Good Time Cloggers that David really liked, and he called them the Good Time Crackers.
Mm-hmm.
Because he couldn't come up with the word cloggers.
Okay. So, how is your daughter doing with this diagnosis? This must be awful spooky for her since she saw her brother pass away from it.
This is a big struggle for her, and she is convinced that a cure is going to be found before we lose her.
Mm-hmm.
She is convinced. She's scared to death of going through what her brother did.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Seeing that firsthand's got to be totally scary. Now, is your daughter having the same types of symptoms as David, or are they a little bit different?
A little bit different because they're two different people. But the hallucinations and delusions are there for Jessica as they were for David, only they're different because David had Abraham Lincoln living in his room. He was more into the 1800s.
Okay.
people from the 1800s. But for Jessica, she's got like Harry Styles from One Direction in
Mm-hmm.
her room, and like Adam Driver from Star Wars.
Okay.
So it's different, and she talks to them.
Okay. Um, so with this disease, I think one of the most difficult things I would imagine is just not having anyone really to talk to about this. Have you found other parents dealing with this? And if so, how have you connected?
I've connected with some other parents, and it's been through Facebook
Mm-hmm.
and through some close support groups. There is some really good support groups on Facebook. Currently, I'm a member of the Harry's groups, the Forget Me Not
Mm-hmm.
groups, and then I have a group that I run with another admin for early onset Lewy bodies.
Okay. Now, Harry, have you run across this a lot in your various groups that you do? Have you seen a lot of discussion regarding children with dementia?
Absolutely not. Um, I first met Lorena some years ago. We had a conference up in New York, and I met her, and we also had a camp out, a cookout camp out several years ago, and again I met her and the kids, and when I had some interesting conversations with Lorena because children don't get dementia. In my eyes, I never heard of young children, but here I was talking to these kids. They were sitting beside me, and they were living with dementia. And the sad part about it is children do get dementia, but it is so hard to get help for them
Mm-hmm.
because it is so hard to get a diagnosis because they are children, and doctors don't look at that in children. And I have to admit I've learned so much from this family, and I've got so much compassion for them and the struggles they go through because um, Lorena goes through a very unique, different type of struggle. When you're a caregiver and you're caring for your older mother and father, that's one thing. But when you when you when you're caring for your children that have dementia, I mean that takes a special type of lady to do that. And my my hands are up to Lorena. She does a wonderful job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always hard to see your kids struggle with anything, but then with a terminal illness on top of it, and then one that's so rare that there really isn't any help out there. That's just got to be devastating and so much misunderstanding. And I talk a lot with people who have dementia, adults, that say how they've had to struggle with their physicians and the healthcare system just to get their own diagnosis. And I can't even imagine what that's like, to have to push and fight constantly for a child. How did you get the diagnosis? Can you share with us kind of the process that you had to go through? Because I'm imagining that you had to go through a lot of lit fire hoops even to get that diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. We sure did. For David, he had a really good clinical psychologist that kept recommending neuropsych testing and kept insisting that he had an organic brain disease, but the insurance company, which was Medicaid, kept refusing to let him have the testing. Finally, after we bugged them enough, they did let him have the testing when he was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And that for a child to be diagnosed, I think it's for adults too, they have to be impaired in 2 of the 5 areas of cognition that are tested in the neuropsych testing. And David was impaired in 4 of the 5 areas when
Okay.
he got diagnosed with dementia and NOS. At that point, we started going to IU to get him tested for possible medical conditions that could reverse his symptoms, because there are things like a thyroid condition or even a brain tumor, they can treat them and reverse the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the case with David, so it was determined that it was progressive, but it was still NOS. It was 2 years later, David was declining after having a outpatient surgery and the general anesthesia given. Then he was put in the hospital for observational testing because of the way he was being.
Mm-hmm.
And I had left him to go get a salad for him from the nearby McDonald's. And when I did that, I was gone a half an hour. When I came back up, he was restrained to the bed, and they had given him Haldol. Well, Haldol is one of the worst things you can give to somebody with Lewy body.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Rush University, I was told that that can actually speed it up. So it was like 2 weeks after that that David's Lewy body symptoms really began emerging, and he was diagnosed with Lewy body. And he was referred from IU to Rush University in Chicago.
Okay. That had to be pretty traumatic in terms of thinking that the hospital or the clinic might have sped this process up. But then in some ways, maybe it was a gift in order to get the diagnosis, or...
Yeah, well, when we got the diagnosis, my first thought was, he's going to get better now. We know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of that Lewy body dementia before. I thought he was going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor just took me out in the hallway and told me he wasn't going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
That this is terminal, and he's, we got to try to treat the symptoms. And that was in 2012. He passed away in 2015.
Okay. And then how about for Jessica? How did her diagnosis go? Can you go into a little more detail in terms of that, given she's a little bit older? And
Sure. Jessica also has had symptoms since middle school age, but they kept saying it was psychological. She was diagnosed with bipolar
mm-hmm.
and then schizophrenia because of the hallucinations. And because she was already diagnosed with those, Medicaid said, no, we're not going to test her for cognitive. We already know what this is. They actually, and they, again, this can't be happening to someone so young.
Mm-hmm.
So then finally, the same clinical psychologist that had pushed for David pushed for Jessica. And finally, Medicaid approved her testing, and it was approved like right around the time that David did pass. And then she went through neuropsych testing and was tested by a neurologist up in Indianapolis, who then said this is progressive. And then she was diagnosed with Lewy body.
Okay.
The symptoms were there.
Okay. So, it's hard to believe one child in a family could have this. What are the odds of having two children in one family diagnosed with dementia? Do you know?
I think it's very rare. Our family is one of a kind.
Mm-hmm.
But,
lucky you,
huh?
It
does happen.
Mm-hmm. Gosh.
We have people, ever since I can remember, there's been somebody in my family that has had one type of dementia or another.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of family members, can you say what, was it your mom or grandparents or aunt or uncles or?
Oh, and when I was a kid, it was my grandpa. He was diagnosed with hardening of the arteries,
mm-hmm.
which later became to be known as Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
And they changed his diagnosis to Alzheimer's. But he was diagnosed in his early 50s and died when he was like 82.
Okay.
And he was, I wasn't really involved in his care, but Grandpa wasn't Grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after that, it was my dad's uncle. Then it was David. Now it's Jessica. And my dad currently is in the hospital for his dementia symptoms.
Okay. Wow, that's that's got to be spooky. Do you worry about it cropping up with you?
I do, and I think because I'm around it so much, I'm extra sensitive to the symptoms of it.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I'm okay. I hope that I don't get it, but I will always, for as long as I can, advocate for it, especially with children. There are other children out there with it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pictures that I sent you is of Jessica and a friend of mine who has given me permission to share that picture and share his name. His first name is Nick. Jessica and Nick have met in person. They both have a form of dementia, and Jessica actually spent a couple weeks at Nick's house with his family back in 2015.
Okay. Wow. What was Jessica's thoughts when she met somebody else? That must have been almost reassuring in some ways, I would think. Did she talk about that?
Yes, she really enjoys it when her and Nick can visit each other. They get along. They have a lot of things in common. But what is also really neat is that my younger daughter, who does not have dementia, really gets along with Nick's younger brother Joe
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and they have spent time together because they have the commonality that they are siblings that have an older sibling with us.
Okay. Okay. Harry, do you have any questions at this point, or I don't want to leave you out?
Yeah, I had some comments that I have to throw in. Now I've known this family for several years, and they have found a special place in my heart. And you have to realize that a young man like David living with Lewy bodies, what type of support did he have? His peers, they don't understand that. He himself didn't even understand it. Now, I communicate with a lot of people with Lewy bodies, and Lorena's children. I can communicate with them because I know how to talk to somebody. But if somebody would come up to David when he was 17 years old, and they didn't understand that he had this horrible disease, and of course there's kids that age are so cruel that they just added so much on him, but they survived. Somehow they survived that, and they didn't let it bother them. Of course, it bothered them to a point, but the point I'm trying to make is there's no support for kids living with dementia, none whatsoever. When David wanted to join Forget Me Not, we had a rule on Forget Me Not that children under 18 could not join because in our inexperienced minds we thought they were too tender of an age to handle what us old people talk about with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So when David wanted to join Forget Me Not, of course he was turned down until I stepped in and I said things have to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so David was a big pivotal point in me in changing things like that. On like now we have no such rules in any of the support groups I have. That because we fully understand that dementia affects everybody at any age,
Mm-hmm.
but we can learn so much. We can learn so much especially from these kids that have dementia. Now, it's rare that children get dementia,
Mm-hmm.
but they do, and we can't push it under the rug and give it a different label. It is what it is, and more programs. I know some of the fights that Lorena had to fight, the hoops she had to jump through and things like that. And I'm here to tell you that's wrong. That is so wrong. We shouldn't have to fight that hard to get help for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put my soapbox away. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Hey, it's okay, Harry. We love your family too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lorena, any comments to what Harry just stated?
Yeah, I do, if I may. David was such an inspiration, and he handled this disease way better than you would expect a child to. And one of the things David told me was that David told me to never stop telling other people about dementia because he doesn't want any other kid to ever go through this.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. There was no support for him except for his family, and even doctors would say there's nothing wrong with him. It's just psychological. He's a kid acting out.
Mm-hmm.
Once he got the diagnosis, it was still very difficult, and it's a struggle, and it shouldn't have to be that way for kids. I mean, they can't see a specialist for this because they don't treat anybody that young. Research studies won't accept them. It is there are huge barriers and stumbling blocks for a child with dementia.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Now, were there any with David, did he have any abnormal tests as far as components, in his system? We always hear about metals and things like that. Was there anything that kind of stood out that made you think, well, gosh, I wonder if this caused it, or leading to some, I guess, train of thought in terms of the disease?
No, there actually were not any. The tests were normal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As far as the metals and the blood work.
Okay. Yeah, it's now. Did you by chance donate his brain at all, or I know everyone has a different
I tried.
philosophy.
They wouldn't take it.
Really?
I tried, but they said that because when he was on hospice, he fell out of bed. He had what they call terminal restlessness. I'm like, you would think they would want to learn, and they said, well, we can't take it because he fell and he hurt his face. I'm like, that's not an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
but they did, for some reason they would not let me donate it. I tried.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's sad.
He wanted others to learn.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really sad that, but, they have their criteria set up for whatever reasons. And I know people see that in trials all the time. They're like, hey, I'm all ready to be a participant. And then it's, no, you don't qualify because the constraints are pretty tight with that. Can you talk about, what in terms of, you've talked with others who have children with dementia as well. What are the most common misdiagnoses that you've seen for children with dementia?
Well, and what I've seen is very limited because of how rare this is. What really misdiagnoses for my kids were bipolar. David was diagnosed with bipolar at age 7. Jessica was diagnosed at age 11. Then Jessica was diagnosed with autism and schizophrenia due to the hallucinations and delusions. We now know that he didn't have that, but he does have Lewy body.
Mm-hmm.
For David, he was not diagnosed with schizophrenia, but he did have the bipolar because of the ups and downs. With Lewy body, there is fluctuations of cognition, and sometimes they are really with it, and sometimes they aren't,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and stuff. And there was his personality changes where he was quick to become angry and then would cry for no reason at all. And stuff. But as far as, I mean, those are the diagnoses I know of that can be misdiagnosed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Harry, have you heard other things through your chatter on Facebook at all with parents who have children with dementia?
Yeah, I do. I get asked questions, and to be honest with you, Roy, I don't have the experience. I don't have the knowledge of it. Now, my knowledge comes from living with it for 13 years and that older stuff. But Lorena, is there anything that you can any encouragement or any advice you can give to parents that have children? Now, so many times, like you said, they're too young to have any sort of dementia, so let's call it a different name. But in reality, it is. If I'll give an example. I can have a traumatic brain injury, and that leads to dementia. And if I'm older, people accept that. But how about a child? The child's in a car accident, has a traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they get diagnosed with something else. They're kind of written off because they don't qualify for any of the programs out there because they're too young. But is there any advice I know the battles you fought. My God, I was standing there beside you. Is there any advice you can give to parents that have children like this? Maybe what they can do. How do you now? You can't take a child with dementia and protect them and hide them away. I mean, that's what mothers want to do. They want to take the child and protect them and hide them away so nobody can hurt them. But that may not be the wisest thing to do. Is there any advice you can give parents that might have a child like yours that can help them and help me understand it?
I would say reach out to your pediatrician or your primary care doctor. And for me, the Alzheimer's Association here in Indiana was an amazing resource for me. They really took the time. They came out and they met David. They talked with David. They gave me information I needed that I couldn't get from anybody else because they were not specialists. The number one thing is don't give up on your child. If a doctor says they're too young, it's the wrong doctor. Go find a different one because a lot of doctors don't believe children can get this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A lot of doctors just say, oh, well, he's just a kid acting out, or they want to look at psychological, not cognitive. Insurance companies don't want to look at cognitive either. You just got to be persistent, and that's your child. You
Mm-hmm.
want the best possible care for them, and right now, they're not afforded the quality of care that the older adult community is with dementia.
Now, I have a question for you, Lorena. How did this affect your family financially? Because I mean, I just it had to have had an impact in terms of just ability to work and healthcare costs and all of that. Can you talk to that at all for our listeners?
Yes, it sure did. I had to step down the PRN status with my job position, meaning I was only working as needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for 2 years. I actually had to go into a bankruptcy because I chose to stay with my kid
Mm-hmm.
instead of work. And that was important to me, that I was there for him and that I could help him the best possible thing. And I knew his time here was limited, and I just wanted to spend every minute I could with him.
Sure, and that's totally understandable. I just can't even imagine the frustration, because I would want to be there with my child as well, through the journey. And I mean, you really have to weigh things out in terms of how do you make ends meet. And we hear all the time people with young onset, they can't, they're too young and they can't get help. But most of them are 5 to 10 years too young. They're not 50 years and 40 years too young to get assistance.
Yeah.
And, we hear all the time doctors still with adults saying, well, I'm not looking for that because you're too young. And to be hearing that over and over and over again from people, and for parents not to even know that this could be a possibility because nobody knows. And we always look up to our doctors and think they have all the answers. And to know that they really don't can be kind of a scary place to go. And so being diligent and I think tapping into social media can really, I would imagine, be a lifesaver. I mean, I've heard that over and over from people in support groups, that they just feel understood and accepted, and they're pointed in different directions that they feel are safe because parties are going through similar circumstances. Has social media and, being on Facebook and stuff, has that helped you kind of maintain your sanity and your ability to push forward?
Oh, yes, it has. In fact, I couldn't leave the house because he couldn't go out.
Mm-hmm.
David couldn't go out, or Jessica can't go out. And I actually have a really good friend on Facebook who is from Australia, and I mean, we're like best friends now because her nights are my days, and we really get along, and she's been a invaluable help. But also, there's so many others, Harry and Robert Bowles, I can't even say their names right. They're awesome helps. I mean, Robert will call me every so often and ask me how I'm doing,
mm-hmm.
and how is my family, how is Jessica, how is my dad, and stuff. And that means the world to me, because a lot of times I can't leave the house because they don't want to leave home, or it's not safe with them sundowning and having their hallucinations.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for those that don't know, Robert is also living with Lewy body dementia himself, though he's a retired pharmacist, but still having symptoms. And I would think, do you find in your conversations with him an ability to maybe ask some questions to somebody living with it that can still respond? I would imagine as the disease progresses, that gets a little bit more difficult to do, or maybe even for children to be able to put into words what's happening.
Oh, of course. And I mean, I am so thankful to people, that are living with this disease, that are willing to share what they're going through. It helps me to understand what my kids might be thinking while they're going through this.
Mm-hmm.
How can I help them better?
Yeah, because especially when it comes to hallucinations, if you've never had one, I would imagine it's hard to know the fear factor that can be wrapped in that, or the disorientation that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it really, it's their reality. Even though it might not be ours, those things are truly happening in their body, and their mind is responding appropriately to them happening. And that's a hard thing for, I think, anybody to wrap their head around,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Jessica's hallucinations, most of them are not scary.
Mm-hmm.
They're her friends. She's talking to them. She's telling them, why did you say that? And talking back to them. once in a while she has a scary one, and I will have to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
She'll come in and she'll say somebody's outside of her room trying to break in. So I'll go in and she'll leave her room for a second, and I'll do my magic spray on the window and stuff that puts up the glass shield that protects her from anybody coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's good again.
Uh-huh.
Now, it's all about going to her reality. She can't come to mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
Well,
here, go ahead.
Lorena is an expert of walking in our world. She understands it. She knows it to a T. She knows what to do there. She's very comfortable there, and that's the difference. Not many people that are not living this disease are comfortable in our world, but Lorena is. She understands it. I know. We could be having a conversation, and I'll say something stupid, and it doesn't faze her. You know, things like that. I mean, she is so in tune to this disease that it's a shame. It's a shame she had to go through that, but her kids, they know how lucky they are to have her, and I just hope Lorraine keeps sharing her knowledge of what she's learning with other people that are going through this, because my God, she has so much to offer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine somebody that has dementia that's a teenager. You know, now I can't remember my years, but I was a teenager once, and I did have a good time. But these kids never had the opportunity to be kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it is so unfair, and it's I'm sorry, I'm a very personal subject with me with kids and dementia. Lorena, my heart is out to you, and you know that.
Yeah. Well, it's
Well,
tough.
thank you, Harry.
It's definitely a tough journey. But Lorena, one of the things I want to ask you is, and I always ask people this: have you found any gifts in this journey? Have there been any blessings?
To enjoy every moment.
Mm-hmm.
That you may not have another moment. To take pictures and stuff. To patience.
Mm-hmm.
Patience is a big one you learn.
Yep.
Learning how to adapt to where they are and what they're going through or trying to. I remember David would become so frustrated when he moved something, but he didn't remember moving it, like his wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd become so frustrated that he couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff, and we would have to become very, very tactful in how we approached that in order to help him. So when it becomes so frustrated, he started becoming aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the, I agree with the patience and live in the moment and adapting. I went through that with my own mom. I think those are beautiful, beautiful lessons. And, the unconditional love and the different levels of unconditional love that come through chronic illness are amazing, because you don't know they even exist until you're walking that path and going, oh, there's another level here. There's another level of acceptance. And I love the adaptability. I just think of our world as a whole, and we don't adapt. We don't compromise. Everything has gotten black and white, and and it's harmed us as a society in general, because we've lost our compassion. We've lost our ability to bond and to build on differences. Instead, people are trying to tear them down, and it's really showing its ugly head these days, especially in politics, of how destructive that process is. And if more people would be accepting and would be a little more patient and would live in the moment and really listen to people's needs instead of policy lines, if it's personal or political or whatever, the motives are, none of us is 100% right ever. It just doesn't work that way. There's, no matter, what we believe, there's an exception to the rule out there that doesn't work for somebody. No business meets everyone's needs. So, we need to really start being more flexible. We need to be more open. We have to pay more attention. We have to listen harder. And I think those are all really cool lessons that, and not everybody is able to see those through the process. Some people never see any blessings in a process like this, but I truly believe that there are blessings to be had if you choose to look for them along the way. So thank you for sharing those. Harry, do you have any blessings in your journey that you want to share with people?
Oh yeah, I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here thinking that I get on these types of shows and I get all emotional, and then I sit back and I say to myself, "Well, Harry, don't just sit here and think about it. Do something about it." But I don't know if I've ever heard the statistics on how many children, young adults, that are diagnosed with dementia. Now they slap another label on them, mm-hmm. and we accept it, mm-hmm. and life goes on. And reality is, this child might have Lewy bodies, and we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know about it. So of course we don't have any programs for young kids with Lewy bodies, mm-hmm. and things like that. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that got to change. And yeah. I'm here to tell you, I'm going to see to it that does change. I am going to start pushing. I'm going to start pushing for more young adults to be tested. Mm-hmm. Don't accept the thing, well, your kid's just bad, mm-hmm. when they're going through hallucinations and things like that. I want them to get them the proper treatment, the proper testing, things like that, because I think we're going to find out that younger onset is bigger than we think. Mm-hmm. We try to put a nice label on things and keep the numbers down, but I think in reality we're going to find out that it's bigger than we think, and things have to change.
Well, and that could very well be true, Harry. I mean, if you look at, even Lorena had mentioned about her grandfather, hardening of the arteries. How many times have disease names changed, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden it's migrated to another area? And we have a lot of mental illness that's being diagnosed in this country and around the world. I mean, there's kind of almost an epidemic with that, and underserved, and you really kind of wonder, because that's in the neurological realm of things. And even Lorena had mentioned that that's kind of a common diagnosis. It's a behavior, it's psychological. And they don't dig deeper into doing, the PET scans and the different types of tests that are out there for a child, because it's just thought to not be true, can't be. And we've all heard the stories over and over about doctors not giving a diagnosis even to an adult because they're so uncomfortable giving it because there's not a cure. And you multiply that by hundreds when you've got a child, versus an adult, mm-hmm. In terms of their discomfort. And, we've got to get past their discomfort or their lack of knowledge And it's not an individual necessarily lack of knowledge, it's an industry lack of knowledge or lack of research, and another area that just has to be fought for in terms of change with things. So I think that that's a really, really good point, Harry. Now, Lorena, I wanted to ask how others can get involved to help raise awareness of childhood dementia. What would you recommend for them?
I would recommend reaching out the local Alzheimer's unit, Alzheimer's Association. I would also recommend networking, like with Facebook. But I would also recommend, like, what I do is I make sure every year I'm at the Alzheimer's walks,
Mm-hmm.
and I walk. We're called Team David and Friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we walk with the children, and I've got permission from other moms to put their child's picture and name on poster boards while we walk and stuff, to say, hey, there are kids out there. Kids
Mm-hmm.
are going through this too, not just the adults.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just so much. I mean, I go to every symposium I can get to. And I speak every time there's a microphone available to speak when questions are asked. I want people to know, you know, this needs to change. It's it's unacceptable that children are just being left out of the loop of the medical care, and medical professionals don't even know what, know or think that it can happen to children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's spooky when you look at having to be the advocate for your child. You know, when someone's in the healthcare system, I mean, and that's really any patient, but when it's a child, it just cuts deeper. I remember when my daughter had spinal meningitis, and they were kind of poo-pooing it to nothing, and I'm like, this is not nothing, and then I went into the doctor earlier than planned, what the doctor had told me to, because I just felt it in my gut. And they're like, good thing you got here, because 20 minutes more she would have been dead, and to have that sense of knowing your child, knowing your loved one, and knowing this isn't right. It's it's fearful, it's panicful, it's overwhelming to try to find the right answers, and to try to get someone who will listen, who will really listen to what it is you're saying, even though you don't know the answers. There's got to be somebody out there, that search mode that you go into to protect your loved one, and to protect a child is just you can't even put it into words. So I can't believe this hour has gone by so quickly. It doesn't take us long to fill 60 minutes. I can tell you that. Lorena, if people are open to contacting you, maybe they have a child that they're wondering, could this be? Would you be open to them contacting you?
Of course I would. That's more than fine. I'll try to help in any way that I can.
Okay. And is the best way through Facebook for you? I know that we have your an email for it's called Butterfly Musical Notes 7.7 at Gmail.
Yeah. Yes, that is my email. And then Facebook, I'm on the Forget Me Not groups, and I'm also on the Lewy Body Dementia Carer site, and I'm also on my early onset Lewy Body group.
Okay, great. And again, the Alzheimer's Association hotline is 800-272-3900, 800-272-3900. Do they have any support groups for parents with children? I had not heard that before.
Absolutely not. I did the early onset group. I did. There's a couple of other parents on my group that have children, and then there's the Lewy Body Cures has another mom on that one, and she has 18. I believe Molly's 18 now. She's in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wonderful. Harry, anything you wanna add?
Just, Lorena, it's not all doom and gloom. We're fighting for you. Things are changing. Not as fast as I want them to change. I've been saying that for too many years, but things are changing. We're opening up a lot of eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage you to get on different chats, different groups. Scream, holler, do anything you have to do to fight for these kids. I know you will, and I know you do.
Mm-hmm.
All my love, girl.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks, Harry. You do a wonderful job, too, with the advocating.
Great. And Harry, your group on Facebook is called Forget Me Nots. So he's got lots of subgroups out there that you'll be able to find Harry Urban on as well. Again, I want to thank you both for being with us today. Really appreciate your time and the information that you shared. I think it'll be a huge eye opener to so many people out there. I want to give a shout out here to Alive and Social, which is our platform here where we do our radio show, and to one of my colleagues, Rachel Perrin, who's the culinary director for Kowalski's Market. She does a great show called What's for Dinner Tonight, which is a podcast that only lasts 10 to 15 minutes, but it's perfect if you have a busy day and yet you're hungry and trying to figure out what to eat. Each episode ends with easy and delicious seasonal menu suggestions, or you can always go to Kowalskis.com for a complete menu, and that's KOWALSKIS.com. And again, just kind of fun to listen to show. For those of you that have heard about our dementia-friendly cruise, we're going to the Caribbean through Holland, America, November 11th through the 18th. We would love to have you join us. Harry actually will be with us, along with Michael Ellenbogen, Lori Shearer, and Mary Reed, and Cindy Lazinski. And we're planning on having a great time. You do need to go through Kathy Schoaf to participate in the conference. It'll be on the cruise, though. So you can just go to alzheimerspeaks.com and get information on that there. For our recent shows, if you haven't listened to them, you can go back. We've got like 6 years worth of shows, so feel free to go back and listen. We talked about how we care and connect, and could that actually be the cure? How we care and connect. We also talked about Rock Against Dementia, which just happened last week, and which is a musical support around the world. And you might want to get more information. Next year, they're going to do the whole month of March where people can participate, and that can be from large venues to just getting friends to sit around your living room and listen to some music. We also did a new Dementia Chats where we had a really interesting conversation. And we hear on Dementia Chats the voices of those that are diagnosed. And they gave us great tips to how to communicate with them. And I think you'll gain a lot of insights, which will be helpful for anybody who wants to care for somebody with dementia. You'll learn about how their senses change, how their emotions and behaviors are affected by their surroundings, and how that impacts their daily lives and those who care for them. What else can I tell you on the blog? Lots of activity. Had a post for Move for the Minds, which is a movement by Maria Shriver that'll be happening June 4th. And check that out. All the money raised for that will go towards women's brain health. I'll actually be out in Orange County in California on June 4th to participate in that. It's in 8 different cities around the country. There's also a new trial for mild cognitive impairment that you might be interested in. And there was a plea to act now from the Us Against Alzheimer's because there's just really significant cuts for dementia being proposed right now. We just finally got money up, which we're still way below all the other major diseases, and now they want to cut us off at the knees again. So check that out. We could really use your name added to the list there. If you're in Arkansas, maybe I'll see you at the Hope for the Future conference in Little Rock on March 31st. I'm also going to be doing a screening of His Neighbor Phil there. And if you're planning ahead, in June, I will be at the Leading Age Conference in Washington doing a keynote on the power of purpose. And again, would love to see you there. Don't forget about the Caregiver Alert Center. They are just a wonderful, wonderful company. If you are worried about somebody maybe wandering, to help protect and have things in place for only $15 a year. If somebody were to wander, they can get a flyer distributed via social media in under 10 minutes and really work well with the police. That's it for today. Look forward to talking to you next week, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.